My next guest, Ashley Bizzell, we're going to be speaking about fasting, intermittent fasting, the benefits to your metabolism, and the benefits to your body's ability to clean up what needs to be cleaned in your body, including degenerative bone tissue. Fasting can be beneficial for blood sugar regulation, for your metabolism, for your bone health. Listen to this super exciting episode with Ashley, who is a registered dietitian, where we're going to discuss fasting and how it can benefit your blood sugar, your bone health, and so many other aspects of healthy, happy aging. All right. Today on Stronger Bones Lifestyle Podcast, I will be speaking with Ashley Bizzell. Ashley is a registered dietitian with a specialty in metabolic issues. So that could be blood sugar regulation of diabetes. It could be weight loss. So we're going to talk about a lot of great things metabolic, and bone health is a metabolic disease if you have osteoporosis. So lots of overlap here. Welcome, Ashley.
Thank you so much, Debbie, for having me today. It's a pleasure to join you on your podcast.
Yes. All right. So let's start with what you do, why you do it.
Sure. Great question. So nutrition has always been something I was interested in. Even as a teenager, looking at magazines and reading about little quizzes you could take. And I was honestly interested in dental health, but found myself studying nutrition in college. And then I stuck with it because I think it's something we can apply to every season of our life. It's something that really has a root cause effect on everything, including bone health. And I worked in the hospital setting for a long time, and I really, truly enjoyed it. But after so many years and a long time in critical care, I really had this yearning to go back to prevention. And after seeing people for so long in the end stages, to really, how can I have a bigger impact on total health, and really fell into the metabolic health space, which is huge. In fact, 93% of Americans are metabolically unhealthy. And so that really had me get into diabetes health. I have a credential in diabetes specifically, so certified diabetes education and care specialist. And that's just really been where I have enjoyed working with people long-term to have an impact on their metabolic health. And here in L-Nutra Health on their cellular level and improving their health too. So I know we'll dive into more about that later, but yes.
Yeah, that's so interesting. And, I interview a lot of functional MDs that have moved away from the traditional model. And my podcast, I try to share as much as possible about the fact that we have a broken system.
Yes.
Our traditional medical model is about disease management, that in the short run, if you have something, an emergency, if you need a joint replacement, if you are having heart issues in the short run, like in the immediate right now, ER types healthcare, yes, that's when our healthcare is amazing and shines.
Right.
But when it comes to managing our health, we get stuck in a disease state. If we go to a doctor, use insurance, that is a disease management system.
It is very much a pharmacy first kind of approach. Polypharmacy is everywhere. When I talk to a lot of my members, I'm shocked at how many medications they're on. And it truly is a Band-Aid kind of healthcare system, just treating these symptoms. And not that medicines are all bad. There are many that are necessary and needed, but I think there are ways that we can dig a little deeper, treat root causes, and reduce some of the, not just medication burden and potential side effects, but the cost burden too.
Yeah, that's what I always think. I'm like, why do these insurance companies not get it? Prevention is going to be cost saving if everything's about money. But maybe that's the point, right? If they keep people sick and they could sell more pills, then they make more money. So maybe that's what it's all about. I just want to say, I like to make everything really understandable to those listening.
Sure.
Use the word polypharmacy. And for some people, they may not have heard that.
Yeah.
That means that you're on lots of medications, right? Yeah. And it's really interesting because what I notice when I work with people, you probably the same, we usually have a section, what medications are you on? And people might know the names and the milligrams, or maybe they don't. And they'll write down in their medication area what they're on. And it's always so amazing to me if somebody's on a lot of things, or if somebody doesn't even know what they're on, why they're on it, or they start doubling up, especially in the cardiac world when it comes to statins, they start to double up. And we're really learning now that these medications, most of them are not good for us. They just kind of keep us in this sick limbo
Yes.
place.
Yes. And it is scary because sometimes there's multiple providers and you hope that somebody's looking at the big picture to make sure there's not interactions, that there's not too many things. And then sometimes people, and I've done this too. We go to Google Med or Chat GPT Med and like look things up and like, oh, should I take this? Should I not? And sometimes they're on a lot of supplements too that maybe do some similar things in their medicines. And then they have this whole pharmacy in their house of medications. And it's a lot to keep up with.
Right. And it's a lot for your body and your liver to keep up
Yes.
with.
Liver and kidneys for sure.
And your digestion and your body. And so it's a lot. So just good that we're talking about this, because I always wonder, like, what level of knowledge does a listener have with all of this? One thing I found super interesting about this topic, there has never, ever, ever been a study done with more than one medication at a time, because they cannot have two things that are variable in a study. If you're doing a double-blind randomized study and you want to prove the efficacy of something, you can't have two things that could potentially be affecting it, because then you can't figure out what one it is.
Yeah.
So you're right. The doctors have to become experts. The pharmacists have to become experts. The nutritionists in the hospital have to become experts at looking at charts and looking at how many things people are on.
Right.
So just not a good place we want to get to. You moved away from it.
Yes.
I'm raising awareness to it. So let's move to the next place then. So that's the sickness care model. That is where you were and you moved away from it. So you say that you specialize in metabolic conditions. Can you even say, what is metabolic?
Yes.
What does that mean?
I know. It's such an interesting word, but it's really a broader term, I guess it's an umbrella term for many things that impact our overall health. So a lot of times when I say metabolic health, I'm referring to maybe people that have obesity. Maybe they have prediabetes, or they have some cardiometabolic risk factors like high blood pressure or high cholesterol. Inflammation can be in that too and can drive a lot of those different factors of health too. So that's really, when I say metabolic health, that's really what I'm referring to.
Yeah. Here's the thing. I'm gonna do a search on this because I want to know like the exact
definition.
Yeah. But here's what I want to say, because my platform is to raise awareness to the fact that osteoporosis is a metabolic inflammatory disease like these other diseases that you work with that are reversible.
Yeah.
And so I'm raising the awareness to that. So here's what metabolic means: relating or deriving from the metabolism of a living organism. So it's really the internal workings of our body, like the cellular respiration. It's about the internal balance. And when your body is internally, biochemically, physiologically, metabolically balanced, you are healthy.
Right.
And when it's not, you are sick, or you're in a disease state.
Yeah. And all of those things, like your metabolism, inflammation, hormones, muscle mass, even blood sugar, those all impact our bone density and bone health. So there's so much interrelation there amongst all of them.
Right. Imbalance in bone metabolism is going to lead to osteoporosis, more bone dissolving than bone building. Imbalance in sugar regulation is going to lead to mostly insulin resistance, right? 90% of the diabetics are type 2, and that's lifestyle based. That's going to be a disease state. And then if it's really chronic or long term, it's going to lead to obesity. But the thing is, they're all reversible.
I know. They are. There are so many. I really push a lot of lifestyle medicine, and I think that gets brushed to the side so often because of that pharmacy first approach. But there is so much we can do with our overall just kind of eating habits, exercise habits, and of course things like sleep and stress and cortisol. Those can impact our health. So the basics that we can do at home to really have a long-term impact on our health span.
Yeah. Okay. So that brings us to so because we're working with food, you're a dietitian.
Yes.
One of the biggest buzzwords right now that I don't know enough about, and I'd love for you to educate us on, is fasting and intermittent fasting. So can you explain when it's good, when it's not good, what the science tells us?
Yes. Fasting is such an interesting concept. And when I was studying to be a dietitian, even outside of college, and I've been practicing 20 years, there wasn't a lot of talk about fasting. We just think about it associated with religions. And so really over the course of the last 5 years, have I really kind of been able to dive in and learn more. So fasting is really the omission of calories. A lot of times people think of fasting as water fasting. And as there was more and more research done about fasting and the benefits, there's clearly a need for innovation in that space because it's hard to water fast. I don't know about you, Debbie. I don't know that I'm strong enough to do a 3, 5, 10-day plus water fast. I've had clients that do, but there are benefits. So let me break that down and then I'll tell you about where I work exactly and what we have to help with fasting. But intermittent fasting is really when we go maybe 12 hours without food, maybe we go 16 hours without food. It gives our body rest, and it's a time where we see benefits in our metabolic health and in weight loss, and maybe even a little bit kind of with cognitive relationship with food, but it's a prolonged fast. And when I say the word prolonged, I mean anything greater than 48 hours. That is where we really see these long-term benefits, cellular benefits, disease reduction benefits, reduced inflammation, and we see weight loss too, but we see this whole improvement in cellular health, every cell in the body, not just in our metabolic health. We see improvements in skin cells. We see improvements in our ability to smell. We have all these studies that are fascinating. But what happens when we do a prolonged fast that you don't get with an intermittent fast is something called autophagy. Auto means self, phagy means eat. It's our body's own ability to recycle and clean up these misfolded proteins, cellular components, mitochondria, maybe some things that are kind of misshapen and not used, and they accumulate in our body. And there's really the only way to get rid of them is through this autophagy process. It's something that our bodies know how to do and have known how to do for years. But, we live in this society of eat all the time. We drink Starbucks all the time. We've got this constant DoorDash of things that we can get at any moment. We don't give our bodies time to get into this cellular cleanup.
Okay, so autophagy, I was going to ask you about that. So autophagy is cellular cleanup. And as you're speaking, first of all, you talked about fasting.
Yes.
And it sounds scary to me to do a 2-day fast. It really does.
Yes.
I don't know if I've ever done it, actually. So that sounds, and then the intermittent, that's when maybe you eat dinner at 6 at night and you don't eat again until 6 in the morning, which would be 12 hours. Or you eat at 6 at night and you don't eat again till
maybe
10 a.m., which is now, what is that, 16 hours, right?
Yes.
So that's what we're talking about. We're talking about that window. And then, but autophagy, you were just saying now. So autophagy, the cellular cleanup, that's really important for the old cells to die off so new cells can grow.
Yes.
If you think about it, Ashley, we probably were designed that way, right? We didn't have DoorDash. We didn't have refrigerators. We didn't have stores or restaurants. We had to kill an animal. We had to harvest that animal or whatever it is we did, harvest the fruit, kill the animal, break it down, all the things that had to be done. And that meant that we weren't always eating meals.
Yes.
Maybe we had a time where we were eating. And then we had seasonally, depending on where we lived. My family's from Scotland and Northern Europe, Ireland and England, freezing in the winter. So I don't even know what that was eating behaviors were like. So we probably are more designed this way. Now, do we know, what do we need for autophagy to happen? Does Cheyenne show us that there's a time frame where now you could be in autophagy?
Yes. So there's some studies going on right now to really show when autophagy begins, but around day 3 is when autophagy begins. So greater than 48 hours. And what happens when we go into this autophagy? It's meaning that we're not triggering these nutrient sensing pathways. So our bodies have these nutrient sensors. IGF-1 is one of them, mTOR, PKA. And when we're not giving them enough nutrients, then we're not triggering those. And those are like messenger systems that tell cells when to grow and repair and how to use energy and things like that. So when we're not triggering those, we're giving the body rest. And, the cells actually shrink just a little bit. And they're kind of like, oh, what are we, Ashley's not giving me any food. Debbie's not giving me any food right now. What am I going to do? And it's just kind of a natural thing to look for cells that are misfolded, proteins, things that are broken. Just like, if you think about, let's say it's cold outside and you have a fire in your house and you've run out of wood and you need something to keep the fire going so you can stay warm. You're not going to go reach for the heirloom furniture that's been passed down for generations. You're going to look for something in your house that's maybe the kitchen stool that's totally scratched up or broken. You're going to give away things that you don't need and can use. And that's what the body essentially does when we're doing autophagy, is kind of going in and looking for things that it doesn't need anymore that it can get rid of. And then, that's when the cellular rejuvenation and renewal happens. And so that's really what's going on. We're not triggering these nutrient sensing pathways. The body can go into cleanup mode, into recycling mode, and then it can go into this time when we begin eating again of a little bit of stem cell regeneration and time to fuel with good foods and to really build new, strong, good cells.
And you mentioned something earlier that this might have happened in spiritual practices,
Yes.
which is true. And I would say that more people probably had an adherence towards a spirituality, before the 2025, there was more of that. And that is prevalent in a lot of spiritual practices and even in practices that are not spiritual, but maybe indigenous cultures and populations.
Exactly.
So it really makes sense. I mean, it sounds like science is showing us this, and it's sensical,
Right.
which I like.
Right. It is. And it's natural. And what's so unique, as more and more research was being done about the kind of disease management that some fasting can do for our bodies and some prevention and just overall health, there was clearly a need for innovation in that space because not everybody can do a prolonged fast. And so I work for a company called L Nutra. I actually work in a medical arm called L Nutra Health. But our kind of pioneer of longevity, Dr. Valter Longo, who is a professor, a researcher at USC in Southern California and also in Milan, he is the one who really discovered the fasting mimicking diet. And so I work for a company that they have this tool to get into autophagy, and essentially it allows your body to get nourishment, but the benefits of a prolonged fast. So that essentially anybody, with the exception of a few things, safety concerns, but essentially anybody can do this 5-day fast because it's a nourished fast. And the way it works is your body gets just enough nutrients that it's flying under the radar that your body doesn't sense that you're eating. So it can go into this cleanup mode.
Okay. And, autophagy is important for bone health too. So that's why I always like to bring things back. Now, okay, so this is important. So just for like educational purposes for those listening,
Sure.
we're talking about fasting for, let's say, 2+ days, right? You said going into that third day.
Yes.
So then there's the terminology called breaking a fast,
Yes.
where what is it that comes into your mouth that is going to signal these pathways, these nutrient pathways you're speaking about, versus what won't signal it. And you're saying the company you work with, this program is actually, you're going to be able to manage yourself during how many ever days you're fasting without signaling what was it?
The
What are those
nutrient
called?
sensing pathways. Yes.
Without triggering the nutrient sensing pathways, which will then allow your body to go into cleanup mode
Right.
and clean up the old debris that we need to get rid of, cellular debris and whatever else.
Exactly.
So how does that happen? Because really, Ashley, it sounds crazy to do. What did you just say? How many days is the program you do? 5 or 6 days?
5 days of fasting, but you get nourishment. So it is less calories. During the 5 days, you essentially have a day of kind of transitioning, and then it's a lot less calories. But it's not about the calories, Debbie, because a lot of people be like, oh, well, I'll just eat less calories. It's about very specific macronutrients that don't trigger those nutrient sensing pathways. For instance, protein. Protein is one of those foods that will quickly kick you out of a fast, trigger the IGF-1 and trigger kind of mTOR. Then we have carbohydrate that can also trigger you out of a fast. And fat, not as much. So when I'm referring to the fasting mimicking diet, the kind of macronutrient makeup of that is really a lower protein, low carb, higher plant-based fat, because it is gluten-free, dairy-free, plant-based foods. They're real foods that you get to consume without triggering those nutrient sensors, which is really fascinating. The science behind it is fascinating. And in fact, we have over 48 clinical trials studying prolonged fasting and its impact on cancer, on metabolic health, on autoimmune conditions, neurodegenerative conditions. It's really amazing. It's because it has a full cellular effect on the body.
It's really fascinating, Ashley, because as you're speaking, I'm thinking about, if I need to lose weight. I've just gained some weight. And then I'll think about losing weight. But then I think about what really matters is you need to lose fat, fat internally, right? I
Mhm.
need to clean up the gunk inside
Right.
and maintain my lean skeletal muscle that will support my bones and
Mhm.
support fall and fracture prevention in my body and that neuromuscular communication. So it's about letting go of all the right stuff and figuring out how to do that. Okay, so when you're talking about plant fats, I'm thinking chia seed, basil seeds, avocados, olives, flax meal. I'm
Yes.
thinking about all the high vegetable potential fats, which you and I haven't spoken about, so I don't know. Now, so you're saying there's 40, how many studies on this?
There's over 48 clinical trials, over 25 years of research behind the fasting mimicking diet that's NIH funded. And so it is truly science-based. It's been demonstrated to be safe in over 1 million users. And it's a great way to do some cleanup for your body. And as you said,
Okay.
it's fine for bone health because you're getting nourishment. You're still getting micronutrients. You're still, you're not emitting some of those essential things that we need, but it allows our body, when we get through the cellular renewal part and rejuvenation, to build stronger, good cells. And so a minute ago, you mentioned about breaking your fast. When I work with my own clients, I call them members, what do you eat when you're breaking your fast? That's a great data fuel with good nutrients, things like berries, a lot of the healthy fats that you mentioned with flax seeds and chia seeds and avocados and olives, even some low mercury fish like salmon and quinoa, complex carbs. We are not a, carb fearing company. We really preach balance with nutrients but whole food, plant-based as much as possible.
Okay, so tell me some of the benefits you see how long have you worked for this company?
I've been here over 2.5 years, and there's so many benefits, Debbie. So you touched on one a minute ago that is really one of our biggest differentiators from other companies that are just touting weight loss. Our research shows reduction in visceral fat, but preservation of muscle mass. And as you know, that's so important to our bone health. It's so important to our longevity, to maintain our muscle mass throughout our years, to keep us strong. It's our good metabolic tissue. So that visceral fat, for anyone that's not familiar with that term, that's the fat that we hold around our middle that can be harmful to our overall health and to our organs. And so we want to get rid of that, but stay strong. A lot of people, when they lose weight, a significant amount of weight, they lose both fat and muscle. But we give you, in the prolonged fast, the way the macronutrients are distributed, you get a little bit of glucose. On certain days, you get some glycerol. So it's telling the brain not to release that precious muscle mass. And so even though the weight loss may not come off quite as fast, it's nice progressive weight loss, but because we're keeping your muscle mass high. And that's really important. Body composition is really important to overall health.
Yeah. Are you testing body composition during the
We
program?
do, in fact. So, just for listeners maybe wondering about the fasting mimicking diet, we do have a consumer company, Prolon, where anybody can go in and purchase the fasting mimicking diet. And but we have programs that are specific where if you just even want to work with the dietitian to get some guidance on how many cycles of the fasting mimicking diet you should do, and then good nutrition, and really for accountability. But, we give all of our patients a scale, a body composition scale, so that we can track that together. And it is amazing, like even just 3 cycles, 4 cycles to see improvements in visceral fat, but keeping that skeletal muscle percentage high, looking at keeping that muscle mass high. And, one thing that's really cool about being in the program, because it's very personalized, is that if you have certain goals or if you're looking to build muscle, even more muscle, or you're looking for something specific, in between fasting cycles is an optimum time to really fuel with good nutrients to support improving your overall cellular health. So there's guidance there with how to do that in a way that's just easy. So,
Okay, Ashley, this is so funny. My son,
uh
he bought Prolon.
oh,
I
really?
saw this box,
Yeah.
like a white box with green around it. I didn't
Huh?
know what it was.
Yeah.
So really interesting. I'm super interested in this, to be honest.
Yeah.
I live in Los Angeles near USC.
Yeah.
Are there facilities around the country where if somebody were doing this, that there's actually a place they go in and they do the analysis? I know you said you do the scale, and I have one of those scales, right? The scale, and then use the Hume app.
Right.
Right. So I have that scale,
Mhm.
but I just started working with a functional medicine physician, and she had the in-body system where I
Yeah.
actually held on to the bars. And
Uh-huh.
I think that that is like a $13,000 piece of
Right.
equipment.
I wish we
So
could
uh,
distribute those, Debbie. We cannot.
I know those are great.
Yes,
So
and like the
is this
DEXA
something that,
scan too, those can give you even more detailed information, which are great. But my members that go and maybe they work with a functional medicine physician too, they'll see that on those as well and see those, reductions, which is really cool.
okay, so I didn't know that this was going to turn into this, but
Yeah.
honestly, Ashley, we're going to do something with this because my women have a DEXA scan, and I think a DEXA scan is, to be honest, a bunch of, I say, baloney when it
Mhm.
comes to bone health,
Mm.
because it looks at the outside of the bone, it looks at bone density, and we know now that bone density is not an indicator of fracture risk. Only 11% of the people that fracture have osteoporosis. So the DEXA scan, and this is what my education I get from functional medicine physicians, it's what I get from orthopedic surgeons. The DEXA scan, when it comes to bone density, not great. However, it could actually be amazing to show the variation of lean skeletal muscle and extra body fat, your BMI, what does that stand? Body mass
Yes.
index,
Yeah.
which is what I see all the young people. My son is 30, and I see him, they're using the DEXA scan. And I'm like, well, maybe that's where we should be using the DEXA scan and not in the bone health world.
Mm.
So I am super intrigued by this.
Mhm.
I am actually considering 2026 beginning of
Mhm.
that I go on this program and that I bring people on this program with me,
Yeah.
where our goal is to maintain lean skeletal muscle, because that is what will protect your bones,
Mhm.
is lean skeletal muscle, and get rid of the extra stored energy. I'm not going to call it fat. I'm going to call it stored energy,
Uh-huh.
which comes from imbalanced cellular
Right.
metabolism. When you don't use what is in your body, whether it's because you overate or because stress is packing it on because you're not managing stress, or because of imbalances internally.
Mhm.
Yeah, this is about optimizing bone health for me,
Yes,
Ashley.
it is. And we have our diabetes program. I didn't really talk about it specifically, how it impacts our blood sugars, but there's that reduction in inflammation, but there's improvement in insulin resistance. And that's something we see over time, that people become more and more insulin resistant. And those high blood sugars, those can impact our bone health. So, having that better control with reduced inflammation and improved skeletal muscle, keeping those muscles strong, it can have such a long-term impact on our bone health. They definitely could,
Yeah.
work together.
Completely. And really interesting because people think I have diabetes. Well, once we understand that osteoporosis is a metabolic condition like diabetes, like obesity, and we start to lump it in there, we'll realize that the mechanisms that are going to lead to blood sugar dysregulation, to insulin resistance, to storing too much extra stored energy, leading to obesity. And that's also going to affect cardiovascular health and lots of things. It's like sludge in the system.
Yes.
Once we could start to link all of this as imbalance internally, then anything we're going to do to create balance and using our body's natural cleanup crew, the autophagy component, is really a very smart way to do it.
Yeah, it's true food is medicine. That we always think about the foods we eat, but this is also a tool of food as medicine. Really having a nourished fast is a tool that your body can use to improve your health too. So, and one thing I didn't mention, it is real food. Sometimes people think about fasting and it's like, oh, it must be a bunch of shakes, must be a bunch of bars, but there's olives. You get packs of olives each day. There are some honey nut bars. There's soup every day, different kinds, minestrone, tomato, a white bean and spinach, a butternut squash. And it's structured based on meals. There's almond kale crackers. So you feel like you're really getting meals, real food each day, and to help support you and provide you with some nutrition, but just enough that you're not triggering those nutrient sensing pathways.
Okay, I feel like you should be a little translator here. So if you can't tell, Ashley is from the South. She's got this sweetness
Yes,
where you said there's
there's
real
real
mills. And
meals.
I'm like,
I
I'm
told
like,
you it
what's
would
a
come out,
mill?
Debbie. At some point, it's hard to hide sometimes, especially if I get excited when I'm talking. So
So the word is
that's
meals, right? We're really
right.
eating meals.
Yes,
Okay.
that's right. Yeah.
All right. Ashley, I'm super excited. Can you
Yeah.
explain to me then what kind of is the structure? Like whatever you can tell us in terms of the framework. You kind of have like it sounds to me like there's 5 days, you're going to ease back, you're going to ease into it as you do calorie reduction.
Yes.
There's real meals and food that sounds delicious. So could you just kind of give us an overview of what this looks like and how often should somebody do this?
Yeah, fantastic question. So that white box that you saw of your sons that had the green writing, inside that white box are 5 individual boxes. So everything's nice, well organized. Day 1 is a transition day. That is the day you get the most amount of calories. And it's really a day your body goes from burning glucose as its main source of fuel to, on day 2, kind of going into ketosis and burning fat and ketones. This is where that visceral fat reduction starts. But the purpose is not ketosis. How, there are a lot of people that's what their goal is, following a ketogenic diet or something like that. That's not the goal here. The goal is autophagy, and that begins on day 3. So we've gone from burning glucose from our muscle cells, glycogen stores in the liver and kidney, and then we go to burning fatty acids, ketones, and then autophagy begins on day 3. We allow for a couple of days of autophagy to occur. So we have day 4 and then day 5. And that's really when cellular rejuvenation and renewal occurs. And actually, Debbie, those 2 days, a lot of times people have this renewed sense of energy. It's really interesting because you would think, how would I feel more energy when I've had less calories over the last couple of days? And then day 6, you want to fuel with good foods. You've invested this time into your body. And actually, it's kind of a mental health change too. You think about food different, your relationship with food, and you want to and fuel with good foods afterwards. So if you're a consumer doing Proline, you can do that on your own. Or if you're somebody that wants some accountability, or maybe you have a metabolic condition you are wanting to work on, or maybe you have type 2 diabetes too, we have 2 different programs and they have different cycles of fasting. You asked me, like, how many cycles do you do? So there was a paper that was published in Nature Communications last spring that was really interesting, showing just 3 or 4 cycles of the fasting mimicking diet in a calendar year showed improvement in biological age by 2.5 years. So not our chronological age, but the age of our cells. In our metabolic programs, we encourage people to do 4 cycles of fasting. Now, that's not 4 weeks in a row. It's 5 days a month, but at least 4 to 6 months worth of doing those. And we do labs before, labs after, so you can look at how those biomarkers have changed. We can look for targeted areas that we need to work on together, even in between the fast, but about 4 cycles. And then for our type 2 diabetes patients that we see get into remission, come down off of medication, because it's not about just improving the A1C, it's about doing so with less medication too. And we have studies that show this. It's amazing to drop the A1C by 1.4%, even in just 6 months, with just 6 cycles of fasting. And so we have great programs to support and give guidance based on what you're looking to do, what your body needs to do. So it's a great tool that I hope in the near future gets to become really a part of mainstream medicine, not just, people that are in functional medicine and integrated medicine, but really mainstream for everybody, because everyone could benefit.
Yeah, and the education, I say education is queen. So as you learn to eat this way, you notice your body's reactivity. It's so true. I do a 26-day detox at the beginning of the year. I've done it since 2020.
Yeah.
It's raw food, vegetables. The intention is to do a liver, gallbladder, kidney flush at the end of 2 weeks. So about day 21, we're doing that. And it's so crazy. I give up coffee and I give up like so many things. Yet it's amazing how much energy and clarity I have during that time, how much weight I lose, and then the whole emotional component around food,
Yeah.
because that's really what happens. When we let our emotions drive the show, when we let stress run the show, when we're not paying attention, that's when we're reaching for things, maybe not making the best food choices. And so, yes, we have the benefit of the 5-day and all the support that does biochemical, physiological components, but there's a mental, emotional piece to this as well. And if it's guided and science-backed with lots of education, and then someone does it and realizes, hey, I survived, and you're not starving, right? That's the whole point here. We're not doing a 5-day fast with zero eating. We're eating really specific, intentional foods, and it's an act of self-love, self-care. You're going to see the results of weight loss, of better energy, and in my world, what I care about is giving women back the control of their bone health.
Yes.
And this is going to support the metabolism to support bone health and reduce the inflammation that dissolves bones.
Yes. No, you're absolutely right. That's what we encourage, really. We fast and then we feed with intention. You just use that word, and that it's so true. Giving good minerals, giving good proteins, giving good phytonutrients. Those are all things that our bones love.
Yeah, so amazing. Okay, question, because this was asked. I have a community called Stronger Bones Lifestyle, and I like to share as much information in there as possible. And I was telling them that I'm going to be speaking with you today, and if they had any questions. And so one woman posed a couple of questions I thought was great.
Sure.
Now, she does intermittent fasting for the intention of gut healing. She's got a lot of gut issues, and my program is Healthy Gut, Healthy Bones. I really do a lot of gut work, gut healing of the gut lining, and supporting digestion and absorption of nutrients. So she said, from a gut healing perspective, do we know about fasting and how that supports gut health? That was one of her questions. The other one was with autophagy, and you already answered this one. She said, how long do we need to fast for autophagy? And you said you need to go into that 3-day
You
range.
need to go into that 3 days. And one thing I didn't mention, even when you start eating again on day 6, sometimes autophagy continues for several days. Autophagy can also vary person to person on when it starts exactly based on body composition, but that 3rd day is about the average.
Okay. Is there any emphasis at all in the program or any looking into gut health in the program?
We actually have a number of studies on IBS and that are being done. Our current program isn't really specific to gut health, but what we know is that there are benefits because there are changes in gut microbiota when we do fasting. Of course, there's reduction in inflammation, and we see all kinds of great things going. There's fiber going into your body during that time, and it helps to just establish kind of a clean out too of the body, but with good foods, with plant-based foods. And we see over and over again people that do really well and see improvements in those GI symptoms that they may have been facing before. So it's really about trying to help people improve that inflammatory response that may be contributing to some of those challenges. And the fact that it's gluten-free and dairy-free makes it easier for somebody that maybe has celiac or has lactose intolerance or has, other challenges with their GI.
Yeah, even if they don't have those diseases or medical terms,
Mhm.
I've ran functional labs. I run blood labs on food sensitivities. I never, not one person wasn't reactive to wheat,
Mm,
and about 85% are reactive to dairy. So even it's not just about celiac and lactose
right.
intolerance.
Many people
It
have.
actually, we all have some level of this. The interesting thing is that all of these foods that you're eating and all this work that you're doing is actually repairing the gut lining. And all of those foods, plant-based, really good fat, is going to feed the beneficial gut microbes that maintain that mucosal barrier, that stop leaky gut, that stop all of these. So even if if it's not even being directly said, it is so indirect. I'm actually going to say it's directly
Yeah,
affecting it. Maybe even if the words are
yeah.
not that,
I'm
but yeah.
picturing the bacteria, the happy bacteria flora in there in the gut.
Yeah, they're dancing. Okay, so the other question she asked is about breaking the fast, and she wanted to know, because you mentioned protein, and I'm not sure if you know the answer to this one, but there's one product that I recommend that is amino acids.
Mhm.
It's about 8 amino acids. It's a powder.
Uh-huh.
And so do we know, like, can you said something about protein, but then some of the food has protein, right? There's protein in plants and that.
Yes.
So do we know, are there certain amino acids that you're able to eat? Or if you had amino acids before you started bringing food in, is that going to break the fast?
So during the 5 days, it will break the fast if you have additional amino acids on top. So during those 5 days, if anybody's taking any particular supplements, we generally ask people to pause those unless it's something that's like a prescription supplement that they need, because we send some repletion of micronutrients and things, but just during those 5 days, because we want to make sure that you get the full benefit of the way it's studied. But post fast, anything like that would be fine. After that, we're not. It's just that it's lower protein during those 5 days, so it doesn't trigger some of those nutrient sensing pathways. But outside of that, that would be fine. In fact, we even make a really great, we call it L protein, but a protein that is, vegan protein, doesn't trigger IGF-1, so that it's not associated with aging. That's a good, clean, protein to consume too. So we're not anti-protein. It's just during those 5 days, it's lower protein, not to trigger the nutrient sensing pathways. I
Right.
hope that
Okay.
answers her question.
Yeah, I think it will, and I'll post that for them. All right. So how to find your program. I am going to be talking to you off the air
Yes.
because I'm going to figure out a way to definitely affiliate this
Yeah.
and stand behind this. I do it myself actually in 2026, potentially with a group of women
Yes,
doing it
I'd
with
love
me.
to talk to you
So
about that, doing your own group fast with your own community. I think that's a fantastic idea. But if you're interested in learning more, we have Prolon Life, so PROLONLIFE.com is our consumer division. Anybody can go in there. We have a Prolon guided health program, so you can work with the dietitian to help figure out which is the right place for you to be. Nutra Health, the medical division that I'm in, I actually work with both. We're all together really, but L Nutra Health, you could go to support at L-Nutra, Nutra health.com. And I can send these to Debbie.
well, I'll have them in the show notes. I'm going to
Perfect.
have the information down there, and then you and I are going to talk and let's see what we come up with because it's so much easier when you do a program
It is.
and you're guided. And, I run functional labs and I work privately with women and give them a program and I meet with them monthly. It's definitely a lot easier
Mm,
when you're following something. And it's also great to do things in a group.
yes.
And then you start posting, hey, here's what's happening to me. And there's something so empowering. You feel great when you do that.
Mhm.
And for me, this is going to help gut health. This is going to help the mental, emotional components of eating. So it's going to help the dietary aspect. It's going to help the maintaining lean skeletal muscle. So I just see so many benefits to this supported program.
Yes. No,
Help
I'm
women
so
make the
excited
shifts.
for you, Debbie. I think it'll be fantastic because really, you're right. Strong bones, they start with strong metabolism. And I think, a lot of times we think it's just downhill as we age, but it doesn't have to be.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be. It's so true. Like I'll be 60 next year, and I'm going to actually be a sexagenarian.
Oh,
I'm like, ooh, I like that. But my population is definitely 60 plus or 50 plus. They're my age. And when I teach yoga to my 70 or 80-year-olds, and I'm like, oh, when you get aches and pains, they're like, oh, Debbie, just you wait.
yes.
Those that are 10 years ahead of me, 20 years ahead of me, they're okay, just you wait.
But you see
All right,
people that
Ashley.
feel good for long. There was one, I have to tell you this quick study that was so interesting. This was a study done and it was published in Diabetologia. People that had type 2 diabetes, and they did 12 cycles of fasting. So 1 5-day period each month for 12 months. And what they found at the end, and they weren't even intentionally researching this particular aspect, people over time, they found that they were more active. In fact, 4 hours more of activity per week. Not high intense exercise necessarily or a tennis match, but movement throughout their week. 4 hours, that's significant. That's because they felt good. They felt strong. Their muscles were maintained. Their bones are strong. And that's really what we want people to be able to achieve. Not necessarily living to be over 100, but feeling good for as long as they can and having the energy to do the things that they want to do.
Right, that's right. You did write that on your form that this is about, it's like the quality of life as you're living and having the energy. And that's my whole thing as well. It's not about, I don't want to live to 100 if I'm going to be miserable the last 10.
Right.
I'll live to 80 if it could be amazing.
Yes.
And then bam, it's over. So whatever it is, it's just, we really need that quality.
Yeah.
Ashley, thank you so much.
Thank
In the
you.
show notes, I'm going to have more information. I know that you mentioned those and maybe people were able to write them down. If they weren't, all of it will be in the show notes.
Perfect.
You and I are going to talk. So for those of you listening, if you're in my community, you might see something or more to be continued is what I'm going to say.
It.
So thank you so much.
Thank you, Debbie. I appreciate your time.
Thanks for joining me on Stronger Bones Lifestyle. Are you ready to take charge of your future? For show notes, resources, and information on my programs, please visit DebiRobinson.com. If today's episode empowered you, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who needs it. Together, we're building stronger bones and stronger lives. Take care, and I'll see you in the next episode.